Some guy just went out and started directing traffic to some lot that he didn't own and collected all the money, and then they towed all the cars.
No college football team has ever packed moving vans and moved across the country in the middle of the night.
I mean, we knew people growing up that were huge U of M fans that nobody in their family had ever stepped foot in the university, and they just rooted for them because they're big fans of the university.
I believe they call that Walmart Wolverines. Welcome to Bourbon and Rum, the podcast dedicated to civil conversation. I'm Kent, I like rum, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle. I like bourbon. I tend to be a little more conservative. We're brothers talking politics over bourbon and rum.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking some of my Kentucky Owl Rye whiskey, a little snip of that. It's 112 proof, 10-year rye whiskey. Quite tasty. What are you after today?
Oh, very simple, little hurricane-proof Cruzan, about 135, with a little ice and a little mix. So I am good to go.
Well, we were talking about topics, and I was telling you my daughter she's in her club volleyball team, and we had a little party today with her new teammates and the parents and really nice folks. So this one topic I want to talk about, which is around college athletics and the payment and such. And so I had a story there. But one of the other guys I was talking to works for the largest student housing firm, college student housing firm, and they set up these student housing deals. And I asked him if he did anything at your university. He hadn't, but that's a whole other topic there. Pretty interesting to learn about. He was telling about the finances of it. I mean, that sounds like because he's telling, like, they build these dorms on a campus and then they operate them. So they develop them and then they own them and run them. And it's like, I mean, the university's paying you for all the kids, and if they don't pay, like, the university has to collect the money, not them. I mean, that is
right. Well, there's a couple of models in that. We can tackle this one first. So, the primary problem in student housing is you got to have a place for your students to live, but you've got to forecast your capacity 30 years in advance.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that makes it hard. And one of the things that happened in this country, there's a couple of principles that I'm going to sprinkle in here that are going to actually have relevance throughout. So very few people in this country went to college before World War II. Like, the number of graduates of college was really, really small before World War II. But the GI Bill, part of how are we going to handle all these millions of guys that we're bringing back? How are we going to do right by them who fought and won this war protecting our country? Well, one of the things that they did was the GI Bill that funded them going to college. And so you saw after the war a steep ramp up in terms of number of students attending colleges. And colleges are struggling to, how are we going to do this? You got all these servicemen coming back. There are still campuses in this country that if you look around, you'll find little villages of World War II surplus Quonset huts that were used as student housing. In fact, my alma mater, Michigan State, I think our old man stayed in the Quonsets at Michigan State.
Wow.
So right after the war, you've got a lot of growth because you've got the GI Bill. But then, like, it went exponential when those servicemen's children went to school, when the baby boom came online. And so going back to World War II, the number of beds needed in higher education in this country has grown at this exponential looking rate. But some things have changed. And I don't know, we've talked about this a little bit. not necessarily causative, but a real tipping point was the 2008 recession. And the birth rate in this country took a nosedive, especially and this is a really interesting thing, it's not equally distributed across the country. But the Northeast and the Midwest saw birth rates drop dramatically below replenishment rates. And what it means is that colleges and universities in the Midwest and the Northeast, the student population on which they draw just is going down every year rather than up every year.
And what's so ironic about the dialogue I was having with the guy is he even said, he's like, well, I mean, this university housing thing, I mean, it's recession proof. And I was like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess if, because what he talked about, like in COVID and everything, like a lot of their business really went through the roof because, there's people are still paying for these, this college housing. But to your point, I mean, that a couple generations away from the bottom dropping out on that.
Big time.
And then what are you going to do with a building that's got, because he said most of these places, it's like a single bedroom that people are renting, a bathroom or something down the hall. How the hell are you going to rent that out when there's no college there?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure exactly which part of the business he does, but the biggest boom in college housing has been private developments. And if you go around colleges, you'll see, not even university related, you'll see people just building market rate student housing. And when that first came up, I was at Utah State. A guy was an early adopter. One of our alums came to us and he's like, I want to build a really fancy apartment building and rents are going to be, $1,500 a month a kid. This is way back in the day. And we were like, what are you, out of your mind? These are poor college students. And the dude was like, no, that's not how it works. There certainly are kids that can't afford it, and they wind up shunting to university-owned housing. But there are families that will pay like a bottomless amount for their kids to go to school. And so...
Yeah, he made it sound like the on-campus privately operated is the lowest risk. You can fetch a higher rent for the off-campus, but there's some more risks associated.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're doing a deal where you're with the university and you're building and developing it for it, that's a different story. The universities that I've served all, one thing of note, people get mad because the price of the housing. Every university I've worked at, the housing runs like a completely separate business. It's a totally, it's not even on the balance sheet or the P&L of the main university. It stands alone. Parking is the same way. It's a subsidiary enterprise, and it always kills me because people get really mad about the price of parking on a campus. And it's like, well, that's really valuable real estate. And and if they don't charge for parking, then they're subsidizing. Like you have to charge for it. So.
Reminds me, a couple of years ago, they had the Cotton Bowl was getting played in Dallas, and 100 cars parked in this parking lot. Everybody paid, $30 a pop or whatever, and then all the cars wound up getting towed. Some guy just went out and started directing traffic to some lot that he didn't own and collected all the money, and then they towed all the cars.
Right here, that's awesome. That guy's got $3,000 in cash and happy as a clam.
Yeah.
So anyway, the declining population is going to have a huge impact on that student housing thing and a whole lot of other things about capacity, about, big prestigious universities are going to be fine, but smaller colleges with low endowments that already have a high cost structure, they're going to go bankrupt. The institution I got my master's degree from went bankrupt a few years ago. And they're happening in states all across this country all the time.
Well, and you combine the lower number of students, also, as we've talked about with AI, what's the impact going to be there as far as, 20 years from now, what's the university system going to look like?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and And how do you capacity match a country with a declining birth rate? In other words, a flat line. The whole thing has kind of been predicated on more students every year, right? Like that, it's almost, I mean, a Ponzi scheme, but the things that need to be addressed, the number of PhDs that are awarded and in what fields they're awarded. You're going to find yourself already some fields you keep graduating PhDs out of major universities into a job market that doesn't exist. Like that's only going to accelerate.
Yeah. So on that same note, I'm at this same party and I was talking to a lady whose daughter plays on our team, but she's got a daughter who's in college. She goes to a college out west, and she was saying she got a full ride scholarship to go there, which is great. And then that university got into this with, I guess, some other universities in the conference, and you'll know how all this works, but they got into this thing called a revenue sharing program. And volleyball there happened to be a big sport. So if you make it into the top 5 sports, you get this revenue share. So the money that the university collects off all the sports, they farm a chunk of it out to the players in on the top 5 sports teams. And so this girl is, going to college out there, and she didn't say how much she's making, but it sounded like it's a 6-figure plus salary she's getting from the university through this process. And then there was a series of, that was the other thing she was saying, that there's like a series of bonuses they do each year to try to discourage kids from getting on the transfer portal, because now you can do the transfer portal and you can pop over to another school immediately. You used to get like an eligibility hit. Well, now you can go instantly. So they're giving them a big bonus to stay. And then they've got she said they have a NIL, the name, image, likeness coordinator for the school, and is linking them up with advertising opportunities and all these business opportunities to get money and NIL money. And so, the way she said it, she's making way more than she's going to make in her first year after graduation. She's able to get her, because she started, this is interesting too, she said they get 5 years to play. Well, because of her doing advanced placement stuff, she really started as a sophomore. So she did her undergrad for 3 years, and then she's going to get her master's degree. So you get an undergraduate, a master's degree, all paid for, plus how many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in salary. And they actually have a financial advisor for the team and is getting them all IRAs and investments. And it's like, I don't know. From my perspective, I think it's great because, before that, all these kids are playing ball for all these schools, and they would say, oh, we're amateurs only. Yet, especially a football team is bringing in millions of dollars for the university. So the university's making a ton of money. The kids are not getting anything. And I always think about it like, probably less of a risk in volleyball, but like football, you could be the star running back and help, raise the university a ton of money in football, and you get injured your senior year, you're never going to play in the pros, and they never get anything. So being able to share in that seems reasonable from an outsider point of view, but then that all, okay, now they're no longer amateurs. It like totally changes the nature of the business. So I'd love to hear your point of view from a university.
Yeah, and I don't want to babble too much about history, but I think it's important. I will say top line, I 100% agree with you that I think that the student athletes deserve some share of the windfall that their play and effort yields the university. 100% agree. And in fact, I think the ignoring of that for so many years is really I fault the NCAA for the way stuff is, with the strategic choices they made to try to protect what they perceived was their brand. And I'm not that the individual universities or the conferences don't have some culpability in this, but really it goes back to the NCAA setting this, I think, artificially impossible standard of amateurism before. And what it presumed was that you got, congratulations, you're a student, you're an athlete, you're not an employee, you don't get paid, even though you can't work because your practice occupies all your time, and you can't have any money other than your scholarship. And it was just literally untenable, and it should surprise nobody that cheating was rampant. Well, a couple of significant court cases happened, and a couple of things turned, and I think the NCAA lost control of the situation. But the net effect is this. First of all, a few years ago, I'll have to get my dates right, it was decreed that students could profit from and own the dollars that were generated by their name, their image, and their likeness. And this means, anything from you putting me on a Wheaties box, or I've got a endorsement deal with Nike, to the local grocery store liked having one of the volleyball players there in uniform when they had a new store opening, right?
Yeah.
This huge range of things where the students could get paid. And the idea of it was that they get paid for appearances and things like this. That completely got hijacked into a money shoveling exercise. And it became an arms race between universities trying to raise money to pay for this. Those dollars were raised outside the university because the deal that allowed NIL at the time, this has changed, said that none of that money can be under the control of the university. It has to be outside collectives or things built with alums. Like, the insanity of this, right? Like, not only do we have a system that's like ready for crookedness, we're going to make a rule that nobody who has any accountability for this can be involved in the transaction.
Yeah.
Well, then most recently, the court decision that said that the students are entitled to some of the revenue share, and
so it's two court cases. There's one that resulted in NIL, and then the revenue share is something subsequent later. I'm thinking about, the NIL, there's the revenue share, and then, I don't know, was it also a court case that resulted in the whole transfer portal? Because that's the other huge step change, it seems like, in college athletics.
That's a great question I'm going to have to check on. There was the O'Bannon ruling, 2014, ruled that amateurism rules violated the Sherman Antitrust Act. And that meant schools could raise scholarships to cover the full cost of attendance. What this allowed them to do is it let the schools cover for the students the so-called true cost of attendance, which is tuition, but also, reasonable transportation home for Christmas, or, other students have walking around money, and it let them do that. Well, so there was the court case that allowed the NIL, and that went on for a while, and then the House settlement was a court case that was settled with Grant House was the plaintiff, and Sedona Prince, a basketball player. It was approved in June 6, 2025, and it said that players now were entitled to back damages, check this out, $2.8 billion over 10 years, to the roughly 184,000 athletes who competed from 2016 onward. Next,
what case was that?
House versus NCAA. The next thing it did is it said schools will pay athletes directly, capped at 22% of the average revenue from media, tickets, and sponsorships. So it's capped. It's $20.5 million the first year, $21.3 per school. And the schools decide how they're going to parcel out that $20 or $21 million. And they get to decide how they're going to do it. And so apparently your friend's student is, when a college fields 25 sports, that $21 million spreads pretty fast, right? You know, by the time you take care of the football and basketball team, there's not a lot of money left. But this is how they basically work out revenue sharing deals with the athletes.
That's crazy. 25 million. So that could add up for sure.
You hit on a really important other point, and that's the transfer portal. But it's kind of the perfect storm. We made it extremely easy for students to change schools. Then we made it perfectly legal for schools to offer the students money. Well, think about what you're going to get with that. And it really
Say
has.
that again?
You made with the transfer portal. It removed the waiting period of eligibility.
Yeah.
So it was frictionless to the student for eligibility. And at the same time, you change the rules so that schools can offer students money. And what have you got?
Everybody's going to go to the highest dollar. Right.
Exactly. It has even less protections than, your major league sports have, like drafts, and they have like free agent rules. There's no rules in this. It can be any school for themselves. And what this is going to do, my prediction, a couple things. It's going to make college sports more competitive. It's going to concentrate power. We've got our 5 power conferences right now. Here's my guess. 2 of those conferences stand above the rest, and it's everybody else after that. And those 2 conferences, so much money changes hands with student athletes that it drives the schools to do really unusual things. Essentially where this is headed is at the very top level of competition. You're going to privatize. You're going to privatize the school's athletic teams. They're going to become standalone corporations. That's my forecast on this.
Okay, so then let me ask, what does the college, what would happen to universities if you took sports, if you decoupled sports from the universities?
It's a great question, and the answer depends entirely on who you are and what conference you're in. So, big conferences, the marquee names, the Big Ten and the SEC, they are profound net supporters of their universities. For one, athletics division in every one of those universities writes a check every year for full freight tuition for all of their students. Many of their students are going to be out-of-state students. They just write a check with no discounting. Every university significantly discounts its tuition to reach students. Very few people pay the sticker price. If you walk into a college and they say, here's the tuition, and you go through the financial aid, they look at your financials, and they say, tuition's $50,000 for this school, your amount is going to be tuition. If they don't give you a scholarship, congratulations, because you're one of the 0.5% rich people in the country. Ordinarily, schools discount tuition. You only pay the people that really pay the sticker price are the fabulously wealthy and athletic departments for their student athletes.
Yeah.
The branding and marketing power of big-time athletics, the licensing value, all of that money directly rolls back to the athletics department, but certainly a high-profile university with a premier athletic program rides on its coattails. It's a proven fact that you win a national championship in football, your application rates bump up the next year. So it's a good thing for the schools. You're getting that tuition revenue that's really artificially high. Many schools are doing a subsidy back to the university for some amounts of money. They do a stipend, but that's at the top of the funnel. Flip to the bottom of it, to the schools that are maybe clinging to the bottom of the football championship series or the football bowl series.
Well, or I think about, what about, Ivy League? I mean, yeah, I don't think anybody's really, I may show my ignorance, but like Cornell's basketball team isn't necessarily at the top tier. Um, you know, so how big a deal would it be for some of those schools if they didn't even have a sports team? I mean, would anybody notice or care?
Well, I think you've seen this over the last 20 years, say. A lot of schools, I mentioned football bowl championship versus football, or football bowl series versus football championship series, kind of division 1A and 1B kind of. And for schools that are on the margin, man, life gets a whole lot easier if you drop down to football championship series. It changes the economics of all the stuff that you're in. Schools on the say the lower quintile of revenue and of success, but trying to play Division 1A, they are sponsoring their sports often by a lot. There's usually student fees that are funding that. A lot of the facilities construction is being either above the line or below the line, subsidized by the university. And so you got this a have and have not. The powerful, the top conferences. Oh, it's great being a university with a Big Ten team or an SEC team. You get to ride all the branding. You get tuition revenue. You get a little bit of a direct payment to keep everybody happy. Everybody's thrilled. At the bottom end of that, I'm thinking, like, I'm not picking on anybody, but like MAC schools and they've got great programs and things are going well, but Eastern Michigan is never going to be able to compete with the University of Michigan. And when the thing is that when you had these
compete in sports or compete in students? What do you mean?
Well,
compete?
Both. I'm thinking competing in sports, but in the past, you had the recruitment power that a University of Michigan degree was really attractive, and you'd have great students there. So you had a competitive recruiting edge. Now you have not just the recruiting edge of the quality of the degree, you get the recruiting edge of the collective fundraising ability of the alumni base.
I guess the bigger question is, would an MBA from University of Michigan mean as much as it does if they didn't have a football team?
Yes. But that's not the right example. University of Michigan is one of the, arguably the top 3 public university business schools in America. So I don't think that's the comparison you want. I think would a Clemson business degree be as worthwhile, or you know what I mean, like, or
but I guess my point, though, when I say is valuable, if you're somebody that's in the know on the top business schools, yes, okay, that has street cred. But when I think of the population of people that, for instance, I mean, we knew people growing up that were huge U of M fans that nobody in their family had ever stepped foot in the university, and they just rooted for them because they're big fans of the university.
I believe they call that Walmart Wolverines.
But I think about the guy that's never been to college is probably not running a business and is going to hire an MBA. But when you multiply that collectively, how much of the reputation of a university is tied up in the intangible goodwill value of the sports brand?
Yeah, it's a serious matter, and it's a serious value. I think the Michigan example is not the example that you want to pick, but in general, absolutely, it matters. It matters a lot. Like I said, look at application rates after you win a national championship. It's a documented thing that it has real market value.
It almost kind of reminds me of, and it's a totally different example, but something that we argue about in the political sphere about healthcare and about how healthcare is tied intrinsically to our jobs. And I think about this in terms of it's like these two things that aren't really related, but they are so integrally related to one another, sports and universities, or healthcare and a job, and it's like, and it all happened, to your point, because of history. It all just kind of flowed together. But you turn around and look, and you're like, why the hell does it matter how good your football team is university? But it does.
Well, no, I completely agree. And I love college sports. I kind of moved on from football for a variety of reasons, but I love basketball in particular and other stuff. But no, why it's reached a point where, when it was a bunch of 20-somethings going to school, and so they started playing games, and then they got all hopped up and played other universities. Like, that all makes sense to me. That we would be running a, I don't know, $100 million, $150 million enterprise in a small town that just happens to share the name of a big university. Like, people know more about your wide receiver and tight end than they do about the Nobel Prize winners that have come from your institution. And look, again, I'm not saying people shouldn't enjoy sports, but to your point, it's a strange marriage, right?
Yeah, and what about in Europe, in places where colleges and universities are paid for? I don't know. I mean, are the sports teams a big thing there?
I can't speak to that at all. I don't know. I think, again, these things have grown up together, right? Our NFL in particular, and think about this. This is a little different, that the route to college, to pro sports, the difference between baseball and football. Baseball has AAA, AA, single A ball, right? They've got a whole infrastructure of farm teams where people play for years before they ever make the majors. And clearly some kids come up through college baseball, but far more go through this kind of farm team system. It is not common that someone goes into the NFL straight from high school. And part of that is because we use college sports to give those kids 5-6 years of conditioning, strengthening, and growth. And, that's a rip-off right there. Who ought to pay our colleges, who ought to help our colleges, is the NFL, for whom we have run a farm system for 100 years.
So that could be an angle, turn all these into private businesses supporting the professional teams. They could all be farm teams.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a hard thing to do because, it's so emotional. I live in a college town. I work on a college campus. It's now August. Kids moved in this weekend. And, we're a couple weeks away from a first football game. And I don't even watch football anymore, but you can't avoid the feeling
excitement,
of
anticipation.
A fall football game on a Midwestern campus. It's unbelievable, the emotional power to that. And it takes people right back to their college days. And it's really hard for me, the right thing to do. And if that were a farm team for the Buffalo Bills, nobody would give a crap. It'd be like, who's packing a stadium for a farm team baseball minor league team, Well, no college football team has ever packed moving vans and moved across the country in the middle of the night and said, we're not the Baltimore Colts anymore, we're the Indianapolis Colts. Doesn't happen.
Right.
And so, it's really kind of inseparable. But the right thing to do would be to break these out as separate enterprises, work out a licensing or a contractual deal with the university. Okay, you say that, but then you are going to move the University of Michigan football team is no longer tied to Michigan. Oh, the University of Michigan screwed us on our contract, so we're going to pick up and move to the Penn State football team. But is that not really happening? Is that not already happening in name only right now, right?
Well, the kids are, yeah.
And coaches make $5 million a year unless they lose 3 games, then they get fired, and then they got to go someplace else. Yeah. It's a weird thing. I don't think people are going to turn loose of it very easy. But I think universities need to be really thoughtful about protecting themselves from the undue influence.
I was just shocked talking to somebody, women's volleyball, that they're getting NIL and revenue. Like, okay, I get it. You're some major university in the football team or the basketball team, but like volleyball players are making money off it. So it's, depending on and I guess it all depends on the university. I mean, some, it depends on the top teams there, but yeah, that's
an ironic thing about this that you mentioned that, I think probably what's driving including volleyball is the university wanting to make some kind of token effort at honoring gender equity. But here's the thing, too. We've lived under Title IX for so long, and what that has required is that the universities have equal number of men and women who have those scholarship opportunities. Even though you've got 2 or 3 sports at most schools that are paying all the bills, you've got hundreds and hundreds of student athletes in other disciplines to balance that out. All of these court settlements, none of them even mentioned the fact that there's a federal law, Title IX. And so it's an open question whether these rev share agreements have to have the kind of equity built into them that Title IX would prefigure.
Well, it sounds like they don't. They just have to pay the top 5 sports. So if you're a women's water polo team, you're not getting anything.
Right.
So, yeah, if they wound up becoming private enterprises, then the other teams that are still with the university would be like a glorified intramural team or something, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's the other thing that you head toward. You head toward some kind of a rift between universities and these enormous businesses that their athletic teams are running. Again, top line, big school revenue. I don't know. We could probably fact check this, but if your athletic budget isn't $100 million, you're not in the game. $100 million a year is real money.
Crazy.
So it does that. It creates a rift with the universities. It creates a rift between the haves and the have-nots. There's not a market for Division I schools. They're 180 or something like that. You know what I mean? I don't think there's 180 teams worth of farm teams for.
Well, and then you talk about what you talked about at the beginning about the population, the student population goes down. I guess that's another question. Does it matter? I mean, if half the people went to the University of Michigan next year that went this year, would that have an impact on their football team? Or their football team still profitable regardless of how many students there are?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the football team, the athletic enterprises stand on their own legs now.
So it really, I mean, to some extent, the university would be better off if they lost half their students and kept their athletic program at the same number. It'd be a lot less mouths to feed. It'd be a lot easier to support. So is there a benefit to some of these schools if the population goes down?
Well, back to our opening salvo, maybe, but you've got 50-year bonds on a bunch of dorms that you can't fill.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's well, and we've talked about this too. This gets a little bit deeper, but we talked about in an earlier episode about, is the construct of our schooling really makes sense for the modern world? Like, you're going to have a 4-year college, you're going to have 4 years of high school, you're going to have so many years of this, so many years of that. In an environment where AI does a lot of the heavy lifting, could you condense the scholastic experience and even the collegiate experience?
Well, maybe. I guess what I would say is don't make the mistake of thinking, I want to say this in a way that doesn't sound obnoxious, but the primary job of a major research university is ordinarily expressed as research, teaching, and service, or some combination of that. Educating undergraduate students is not the primary business line at a lot of big universities. I shouldn't say that. It's a big line. It makes up a lot of a lot of your P&L is based on that, but it's not the most profitable line. It really, research returns are where that really kicks in. And if you look at budget ratios on really big research universities, more money's changing hands over the sponsored research from government and industry than in tuition dollars.
Will AI change the nature of the research university?
That's a really good question. I think the ability of AI to transform research is something that we're still... I'm seeing that directly in my work. Things that would be large-scale research projects are being cranked out in hours.
Well, and now it's like AI is still a similar level of intelligence. I mean, you give it 2 years and it's, 30 times more intelligent than any human intelligence.
Yeah.
That's just going to accelerate.
And even if it's not smarter, raw, what I find with AI that's amazing is, I think it's pretty smart, but the thing that it has is the ability to retain context in a way that I'm losing. I think as we age, I think my actual mental acuity is as sharp as it ever was. What I don't have as good anymore is I lose context. I lose the number of things that I'm thinking about at one time. I can read a document and I need to take notes about edits that I want to make because I'm not going to remember those notes when I get to the bottom of the 26-page document. But AI does remember that all in one place, and that's what really blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, I talk a lot about bourbon with my ChatGPT instance, and so it'll remind me. Well, you really like so and so, and that's why you really like this, and you like so. It's dialed in my bourbon tasting, so that's good.
Well, it just shows priorities. I've been working on my retirement forecasting model all day, and that's the conversation that my AI has with me every time I think about something. And I've separately I'm looking at I want to buy a new watch when they release the new version of the Garmin watch. And it literally said, now that's an expensive watch. How does that line up with your spending plan as outlined in the spreadsheet over here? Great. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
My favorite, though, is when the AI says, well, what I really like to drink is yada, yada, yada. Like, that's interesting. I'm glad you like it.
Now, I think there's a lot of change on the horizon. And
yeah. Well, this has been really fascinating to dig into, and I appreciate you sharing all your insight on it. And, I just want to make a shout out to the listeners. Please, if you've got topics that, we love to talk about politics, but if there's also other random topics, it's kind of fun to explore them when you have people with different viewpoints. You see things a little bit differently sometimes.
Well, we didn't solve this, but it is fun to talk about a different issue, and I'll second your request of our listeners. Give us a complete left turn. Throw us a curveball. Let us hit something.
I feel like our podcast is like Seinfeld. It's a show about nothing.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.